Welcome to Ion Franchising, where you will learn the A to Z's of franchising. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fabulous episode of Ion Franchising. I am your host, Lance Graulich. Today, I have a wonderful new friend and franchisee, and we're gonna talk about what it's like being a franchisee. So, a former military guy 2 times. We'll hear about that. And he's got a master's degree. Not too often I see franchisees with master's degrees, but that's pretty impressive for sure. Hailing from Pennsylvania, franchisee of Schooley Mitchell. Hello, Dennis Schooley, by the way. Dennis is the founder. He's been on the show as well. My good friend, Adam Baker. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you, Lance. I tell you what, I might hire you as my hype man. That might have been the best intro I've ever gotten.
I need a good theme song for you.
I was just thinking, I feel like I should be getting ready to go into the corner now.
Yeah. it's like wrestling or boxing or something. Anyway, welcome, Adam. I'm excited to have you here. You know, my listeners frequently ask, and my clients, candidates, etc., that come to me because I'm a franchise broker. I help people for free find their perfect business, and Schooley Mitchell is a hot one. But people frequently ask, they go, what do real life franchisees look like? I don't know what they look like. I don't know what did they do before, they became a franchisee? Why did they pick a franchise? What was their thinking? So I look forward to diving into that stuff with you today. So Adam, give us your backstory. Let's talk about your upbringing, the military 2 times and all that good fun stuff.
Yeah. So Lance, the military thing was kind of funny in that my mother had taught us, we grew up very, very poor, part of the system in the projects, and she had always taught us, there's no such thing as a free lunch. If someone gives you something, you pay it back. And there were 4 of us, and when we turned 18, we all joined the service. My older brothers joined the Marines, my sister joined the Army, I joined the Air Force. And we always joked with my mom and said, you rolled with such an iron fist that all 4 of us thought it would be easier to go through basic training than it would be to live another day with you. And I love her. But it was that kind of mentality of, you don't just take, you got to give back. And so that's what we did when we turned 18. I joined the Air Force. I did very, very well on my ASVAB. So I chose a nice job, went down to Mississippi for about a year to do my training to work on radar equipment. And I got an assignment to Enid, Oklahoma. And I had to look at a map. I said, where is this place? And on your dream sheet, you can say, hey, this is where I'd want to go. And I put all East Coast and all Europe. I wanted to go explore. And I ended up in the middle of the United States in a small little town.
Shows how you rated way back then.
Oh, for sure. Because everyone else was getting Germany and England and Florida, and I got Oklahoma. And it was the best assignment in the world for me because there was nothing going on. I was this young kid. I had a little bit of money in my pocket. Fortunately, I had nowhere to spend it, and I had a bunch of time. And I had some really great leaders that they said, hey, Adam, you're going to be here. You're going to be here for a while. We want you taking college classes and we want you volunteering. So I kind of got involved, and I did really, really well my first year. I was awarded Airman of the Year, and they said, hey, there's an opportunity for you to get a scholarship, get out of the Air Force, get a scholarship. They'll pay for your degree and you can come back in as an officer. And I said, sure, I'll take it. So I was awarded, there were 350 applicants, 7 were accepted. I was one of the 7, and I got out early on a scholarship. Went to the University of Pittsburgh, got my degree, did ROTC there, and was able to come back in as a 2nd lieutenant and start doing some leadership there. As I was in, I had an opportunity to deploy to Iraq as a team that was, this was 2008. So you got to imagine the Iraq war had been going on for 5 years now, and it was just grinding on the service members. And so DOD looked and said, listen, this war is very expensive and it's a drain on our manpower. What can we do to reduce the cost of the warfighting effort, reduce the impact on our service members, but maintain our operational efficiencies out there, still be able to fight the wars we can? So I went over as a team that looked at, okay, how do we do this? How do we solve this issue without negatively impacting our warfighting capabilities? Did that. It was a great experience. Came back, and my wife said, we're never doing that again. Said, if you get out of the service, we'll move anywhere you want to go. And I grew up north of Pittsburgh. I just wanted to watch Steeler games again. So I said, let's head back to Western Pennsylvania. And so we ended up here. I joined the utilities, and I did a lot of the same things. I was put into leadership roles, but constantly putting on teams for cost reduction. So
when you say you joined the utilities, what does that mean exactly?
So when I left the service, I ended up joining a utilities group. So, at First Energy, it's one of the largest utility groups out there. But I ended up joining them and working as an employee for them, and then working my way up to ultimately I was leading one of their metrics and performance improvement divisions. Okay. And so what we were doing is looking at how do we improve our efficiencies? How do we reduce our costs?
Wonderful. And at what point, how long were you there?
12 years.
12 years. And at what point did you say, I wonder if there's greener pastures somewhere where I can be my own boss?
It was the second time they brought in a international consultancy group. And so they brought in a group of consultants to help us. The first one was based on safety. The second was built on efficiencies and reducing costs. And what I learned through both consultancies were that they would come in, they would be able to generate ideas from the employees, but all the labor, all of the work was put back onto the team, everyone that worked there. The consultants were really just driving the information. And what I saw was the consultants would say, hey, this is where we expect you to get. But all of the work went on the backs of the employees while they're balancing that with everything else they're doing. So you never quite met the goals that the consultants had thought that you'd reach. And I thought, there has got to be a better way to do this. And they say, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. Franchise broker reached out and said, hey, are you interested? And I said, yeah, And we came across Schooley Mitchell. And that's where I made the connection with Schooley Mitchell, because they do the consulting, but they do all the work, and that's how they guarantee their effectiveness versus asking the employees, which are already taxed, to do the work.
Right.
So that's kind of how they lined up for me. So this just makes sense.
So what got you thinking about really being your own boss? Because it's one thing to think, oh, there's got to be a better way to do this or that, but to go out on your own. I mean, look, your wife, as anybody's wife or spouse, certainly has a hand in the decision making, and clearly there was a conversation.
There certainly was. So based on my military service, my master's degree, how I was performing the utilities, I was continuing to be promoted. Well, it was going to get to the point where my next promotion wasn't going to be in Erie, Pennsylvania. And one of the things that my wife really didn't want to do, she didn't want to be globetrotting. That's one of the reasons she wanted to get out of service. She wanted to plant roots. And so it says, okay, there's a better way to do things. There's an opportunity to control my own destiny. And there's an opportunity to do it right here where I live. And I would have that stability.
And create your own schedule.
Correct.
So
Correct.
How many other brands did you look at besides Schooley Mitchell? Do you recall?
I looked at 8 initially. And then I narrowed those down to say, okay, I like this, I don't like this. I said, find me some more like this. So they found me 4 more like that. So 12 total.
Gotcha. And what was the process like with Schooley Mitchell that got you to become a franchisee? Give me the highlights.
It was great. So first it was just an introductory, like, hey, this is who Schooley Mitchell is. This is what they do. And so we did that. But then I started doing calls with Dennis Schooley and just kind of better understanding, asking the questions, and everything kept checking the box, check. And so finally I said, Dennis, listen, I know nothing's always sunshine and rainbows. Like, there's gotta be some downfall to this, and he was able to level say, he said, hey, this is the downfall that we've seen. But other than that, it's exactly what you get.
Yeah.
And so I appreciated that. I appreciated the honesty, and I appreciated being able to connect directly with the franchisor.
So as a franchisee, as a business owner now, Have you noticed that even within Schooley Mitchell, because I've asked Dennis this type of question as well, who is not successful in a franchise and as a business owner? And Dennis had an interesting answer. He said, man, people just sometimes don't work. They love the idea of being a business owner, and they know what the plan is, but they just don't do it. And I hate to compare everything to diet and exercise, but the average individual knows what they should be eating and how they should be exercising. But for some reason, it doesn't happen either in some cases. So what are your thoughts on that? What are, as the listeners are hearing you, you're obviously a bright guy. You come from, humble beginnings, and you've had an incredible life, obviously, that you've laid out for yourself. And now you have the ultimate freedom. But what are those tips? I mean, who is a business, who can be a business owner? Anybody?
Anybody can be a business owner, but I don't think anyone can be a successful business owner. How about that?
Perfect. Let's unravel that a little bit.
I heard on one of your podcasts, one of your guests, I can't remember what he said, but he was talking about the entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur being and I really thought about that. And I was like, you know what? He's exactly right. I think entrepreneurs who want to do everything and they want to make all the rules and do it, I think they might struggle in a franchise system, because the beauty of the franchise system is the parameters are already laid out there. If you, I don't want to say it's a paint by color, but I mean, it's a successful model. So I would say that the people that are successful are those entrepreneurs, the people who are in an organization and they said, hey, these are the policies, these are procedures, and I found a way to be very, very successful while operating within those confines. And I think those are the people that if they say, you know what, I'd be interested in owning my own destiny, those would be the people that I think would be most successful.
Yeah, no, that's all great stuff. By the way, military folks like yourself, veterans or former military, make up 14% of franchisees. It's pretty huge number considering the general population's obviously well below that.
Yeah,
but 14% of franchise owners are veterans, and pretty incredible. Obviously goes to show that, once you're in that sort of organization, you still like that type of structure,
Yes.
And look, Adam, I've told people, and you've heard it on other podcasts that I've mentioned this many times. Anybody could start their own business. People have a certain passion, but there's money, there's time, and there's knowledge. And most people either don't have the knowledge, don't have the money, or certainly don't want to spend the time. So franchising becomes that perfect avenue. You mentioned something else. I know there's always anybody can be a business owner, in my opinion. However, we have to find them the right business. For you, the gentleman or the person that you worked with, I'm not sure who you did, but the person that you worked with obviously cued in and drilled down to, well, what are Adam's skills? Let's talk about that. Because now you've met other Schooley Mitchell franchisees, your skills are obviously transferable to whatever it is you're doing next in life. Is that fair to say?
That is, yes. And there were a couple different tests that I took, some personality assessments and some interest assessments, and those kind of lined up. And we did that first in order to get the original 8 that I selected, or that I was able to select through. So yeah, there were some deep diving and possibly some soul searching there to see what would line up, because you're right. We've all had that job where we just didn't mesh with, but that's a no risk. You can walk away from that. What you don't want is to enter into a franchise agreement with something that you don't mesh with, right. So you take that due diligence to make sure you are in the right place.
Right. Well, and talk a little bit further about that. We were talking a little bit about process. You have an initial conversation and then you get handed a franchise disclosure document. Was that the first time you ever saw a franchise disclosure document? Obviously with Schooley Mitchell or a previous brand. And you were like, what the heck is this? It looks like the size of my mortgage.
It was. I never even heard of it. So years ago, just a email I got about, hey, explore franchises, right? And I was like, and I remember thinking about it, like, I've never even heard of this franchise. How do I know it's a scam? Right. And I just thought people were fly by night franchises, and I didn't know about, the FDD or anything like that. And so when I was handed this, I said, oh my gosh, there is actually a process that manages this to make sure that people aren't just selling franchises willy-nilly,
Right.
and that's important to know because there is trust in that.
Yes.
That as you're going through a credible franchise that says, okay, this is everything that we need to tell you about the business. This is how we've performed. There's a lot of information in there that you're not just making a decision blind.
Such a great point that you brought that up, because it really is about trust the process and then also trust but verify, because franchising is regulated by the federal government, the Federal Trade Commission specifically. And there are 23 items in that disclosure document. And one of them, item number 19, is the earnings claim. So obviously, if it's a brand new franchise, more than likely they will not even have an earnings claim. So I know of situations where people get excited about a brand, just like some people get excited to get married, love at first sight. And there's no earnings claim in that item 19. And they make all kinds of assumptions on their own of how successful they're going to be based on, unfortunately, nothing. So that's why the critical thing is that I, as a franchise broker, play matchmaker, because I can also take the emotion out of it. Pardon me. I could take the emotion out of it and make sure that people get the brand with that solid profit path, as I call it. So that's awesome. So you got the FDD. Did you use a franchise attorney to review that, or
I did. Even though, because I looked, I said, okay, there's almost 200 franchises, so this has to be pretty good. But I still wanted to make sure, for my peace of mind, that we put it through its due diligence. So I still got a franchise attorney to look through it.
And of course, I have a lot of friends that are franchise attorneys, and the key takeaways, and hopefully this is what you learned as well, is it's just really for your protection, so you fully understand what you're getting yourself into, right?
Correct. Yeah, because you think you understand. I say, okay, well, there's not a whole lot. And then he said, hey, these are the questions that you should go back and you should be asking. And it was good because they aren't, as you're new to this process, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you need to know. Yeah. So it was good to have that and everything. It's still, once I got the information, I sent it back to him. He said, okay, yep, that looks good.
Yep. And I do a lot of advising of my clients and candidates for what they should be asking. I even provide some questions they can ask franchisors about the FDD and otherwise. But I always have that disclaimer at the end. I do suggest you consult a franchise attorney. Here's a list of attorneys that I can suggest, and some of them might charge different fees, and some are all inclusive, some are not. But, I might sound like an attorney sometimes, but I just only play one on TV. So they tend to like my honesty, I guess. But after that, so besides the FDD, at some point, you have an opportunity to do validation, which other people don't necessarily even know exists as well, which to me makes franchising so safe, because you look at the FDD and you look at it and you go, well, wait a second. If I can hit these numbers, that's really good. And then you talk to existing franchisees, they hear your experience and like, shoot, Adam, you should be making, $200,000 in no time and $300,000 thereafter. So how did the validation process work? And, what got you excited about that?
The validation process was nice in that, I was able to talk to some folks in a couple things, the money. And this is going to sound very crazy. I wasn't too concerned about the money because I was more concerned about the process. Because if the process worked, the money would follow. And so I really wanted to know, does the process work for you guys? And as I called them, I talked to them, and the things I took away was there was certainly a team atmosphere at Schooley Mitchell. Every franchisee was willing to, say, hey, yep, let's talk. And they loved it because it said the more we grow the brand, the easier it is for us too. So yeah, we love that. Asked them about any issues with head office. Nope, no issues with head office. If we have any issues, we can easily reach out, get that resolved. So everything I was hearing from everyone was very, very good.
It really checked all the boxes.
it did, but there was a piece of my due diligence missing. And I reached back out to Dennis and said, Dennis, everything is good here, but I'd really like to talk to some franchisees that have failed and that have closed up their franchises. And so I was able to get in contact with a few franchisees who they didn't make it. And the first one I talked to, he had personal issues that were going on in his life that it just happened that way. I said, okay. The next one I talked to, he said there was nobody that was interested in his community. Like he didn't sign a single client. No one was interested. I said, I find it hard to believe that everyone else I've talked to, they found it. I said, okay, so he's most likely the anomaly. I feel good that of the franchises that have closed, they aren't because the process failed. And Lance, that's the thing. Franchises in general, but very specifically Schooley Mitchell, that I loved is that a franchise, if you follow the process, it's very easy to identify what isn't working. It's most likely you as the business owner. You know, as an entrepreneur, you're trying a lot of different things to make things stick. You don't really know what it is that isn't working because you have nothing to compare it to. As a franchise, you can look at every other area that the franchises are operating and say, well, what are they doing differently that I'm not doing? Because they're following the same process. You know, a Big Mac in Erie is the same as a Big Mac in Massachusetts. They're the same thing. So what is it that you're doing differently? With Schooley Mitchell, that is even more so because Schooley Mitchell doesn't have territorial limits. We can operate anywhere. You know, I have the same opportunity to clients as the franchisee down in Austin. So if he's having success and I'm not, it's very easy to look and say, okay, there's only one thing that's different here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of sad. You brought it up and I'm glad you did. Because it's kind of sad that there are people that do fail in franchises, but these are people that for the most part would probably fail in any franchise. They just either don't follow the system, don't put in the work, don't really have the traits to be successful maybe on their own. And they might have talked a really good game to get into the system because Dennis and the team is not taking on, no great brand takes on franchisees so they can fail. That's more headache than it's worth. All you want is obvious success within the brand. So there are absolutely going to be failures. I always use the silly example, you know, think of your favorite full service restaurant by your house where there's food servers, waiters, waitresses, etc. And is there a favorite server that you have or two? You know, there's probably a couple of favorite servers. And there's got to be 5 servers that are the bottom of the list that for some reason are the ones that you're like, oh, please don't wait on me. Please don't wait on me. So in life, whether it's franchising or food service, there's the top 10%, and sadly, there's the bottom 10%. So now let's flip it and talk about the top 10%. As you were getting into the brand, and now that you've been in the brand how long now?
A year. This month is 1 year.
Well, happy birthday. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
So if you think of the best franchisees that make the most money, and Schooley Mitchell has people making over $1 million a year net income. Everybody hear that out there? $1 million a year net income from a $68,000 investment in a home-based business. So, but you have to have sales ability and the ability to do business development, of course. But the top franchisees, what do they all have in common? I'm assuming they're all from all walks of life. That's something that people always get crazy about. Well, what did they do before? Well, not everybody was like Adam and worked in public utilities and what have you. That seems to seamlessly flow right into being a Schooley Mitchell franchisee. But what are those traits? Give me some of those traits that you've noticed.
One of the big ones is their ability to build relationships. Schooley Mitchell is very unique in that we don't do any marketing. We don't do advertising. The way we acquire clients is through relationships with other people. So for instance, if, Lance, if I came and I did, an assessment for you and I was able to save you money, you're going to say, Adam, I love you. I want to introduce you to other people. Right now, even if you have a good experience, but we don't have a very good relationship, you might say, hey, it was great saving money, but it is what it is. What the best franchisees are able to do is they're able to really build that relationship. So you say, you know what, Adam, I like what you did. More importantly, I like you. I want to see that you're successful. I want to introduce you to other people. So that's one of the big things, because what we found in Schooley Mitchell is that referral is so important. That introduction into the next business is really critical. And the ones who have been successful, they're very, very good at doing that. They're very good at building those relationships and getting those introductions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all about people, right? I mean, that's really the business. It's all about people. And I mentioned restaurants. I've owned quite a few restaurant franchises. So that's how I relate the most. And at the end of the day, you're creating those raving fans, those people that really love your service, whether you're Schooley Mitchell or whether you're a restaurant, and have to tell people, have to tell 10 friends. And obviously,
in a way that you would understand, Lance, like what we do, we offer, there's no risk to using us. We're either going to save you money, or we're going to let you know that you're paying the least amount for the service that you need.
Speaking of that, Adam, let's take it back a step and explain to everybody. I just realized we really didn't lay out what Schooley Mitchell is. So why don't you lay out what Schooley Mitchell is and who it serves?
Okay. Schooley Mitchell is North America's largest independent cost reduction consulting firm. So what we do is we go into organizations and we look at what they're spending on certain things like utilities, telecom, shipping, waste, credit card processing. If they have a fleet, what they're spending on fuel. And what we'll do is first, we'll make sure they're not paying for things they don't want or need. And we see it all the time where a lot of people, they've got these add-ons that they never thought they had. So we'll get rid of that. The next thing we'll do is we'll look to see, are there any errors on their bills? And you'd be surprised how many times we find that. The third thing we do, and probably the most important, is we go back and we renegotiate lower rates for our clients. And we do this because this is what we specialize in, because we have relationships with the vendors, and because we do it every single day, we're able to get lower rates for all of our clients, or for most of our clients. 90% of the time that we sit down with a business, we're able to find them savings. So that's ultimately what we do. The piece that I really liked, and this goes back to my original comment about working with consulting firms, is that we do all of the work. It takes maybe 2 hours on the business's side for us to gather the information that we need. And then we've got a team of analysts that they do all the work behind the scenes. And then we come back and we say, hey, we were able to create you savings. Would you like us to go ahead and implement for you? And if they say yes, then we run point on implementing that for them. But that's what enables us to guarantee that if we say, hey, we found you this amount of savings, we firmly believe that we'll be able to achieve that for you.
Yeah. And part of what you receive is residual income, which everybody loves that word. I want residual income.
Yes. So the way we work, we only get paid, if we don't find any savings, we don't get paid. But if we're able to find or create savings, then what we do is we share in that savings 50%. And we do that over the course of 36 months. And the reason that we do it over the course of 36 months is twofold. First, we don't just want to come in and save you money and then walk away and leave you, because anybody can save you money, but what kind of service are you getting? So when we're tied together for 36 months, it lets you know, okay, we're going to be here with you. We're walking with you through this process. You can feel confident that whoever we get you with is going to take care of you because we're with you for 36 months. The second piece is that we then manage that vendor for you. So when you have an issue, you can call us and we'll handle it with the vendor. Again, that's why we want to make sure you get really good service for a low cost, because we're going to end up dealing with it for you. And then during the course of the 36 months, we'll continue to go back. We're going to monitor the bills, make sure there's no errors, but also continue to go back to look to see, is there cheaper rates? Did something change that now we can get you cheaper rates?
Yeah. All great stuff. One thing I wanted to go back to, I was just thinking about, so when you decided you were in the process of investigating Schooley Mitchell, maybe you hadn't even talked to Dennis yet, and you obviously had kept your wife in the loop, and you might have told friends and family what you were doing. You were investigating, having a beer on a Friday night, telling them I'm looking at franchise opportunities. What were the comments? Do you remember the comments you might have gotten? Obviously, you remember your wife's comments, but
Everyone thought I was crazy. Everyone
you know
thought I
what,
was
Adam?
crazy.
I love this response because you can tell everybody listening, we didn't set this question up. I didn't give you any canned
Nope.
questions or anything, because that's exactly what I experience as a franchise broker. There's a lot of occasions I have a first phone call with somebody, and then I don't hear from them for a while. And I find out that the real answer is, after they get off the first phone call, super excited about their future, they tell everybody they know what they're going to do. And what do all of them tell them? Exactly what you said. You're crazy. You don't have money. You don't know anything about that. In your case, Adam, you knew a lot about that industry, which is kind of unusual. Most Schooley Mitchell franchisees don't. But tell me more. So people, what did they say specifically other than you're crazy?
I can remember one time I went and I got a beer with one of my friends. He was a coworker of mine, and he said, "Well, Adam, how do you know this is financially going to work out? You're going to, you're giving up your pension, you're giving up this, that." And he said, "It just doesn't make sense." And I said, I just don't see, if you put the work in, how it doesn't work out. I don't see that, because the growth, and this is with any franchise, the growth is really unlimited. There's opportunities to keep growing as long as you're doing well. So that was that. The conversation with my wife was, my wife and I are on two ends of the spectrum. I'm a throw caution to the wind kind of guy. You can't turn apart ships, so just get moving. And my wife is like very, very risk adverse. And so
is mine.
If it weren't for her, after the first call with the franchise broker, say, "Okay, let's sign up. Let's get the money over to you. Let's go." And she's like, "Whoa, I got a lot of questions to ask." And so she had a lot of questions that we could just kind of went through, and fortunately, she's a wonderful, wonderful woman. And we just kind of laid down the one thing that we really had to get our arms around was my working hours. Yeah. And that's because when I was working for the utilities, 16-hour days meant nothing to me. I would go and work. She said, "Listen, I'm afraid that because this is now your own, it's going to be 20-hour days."
Yeah.
And so we really had to kind of figure out, okay, what kind of hours am I going to put in that I feel like I'm dedicating enough to it, but I'm also not taking away from our family. And that was like the big hurdle internally.
Yep. Remember the old expression, you rather work 80 hours a week for yourself than 40 hours a week for someone else. But the reality is there's a lot of jobs that are a lot more demanding. Like you said, you work in these tremendous hours before. So that was great. Thank you for sharing all that. So what are your friends saying now that you've made it, so to speak?
They're happy for me. They said, "Man, that's great." And actually, I was out on the golf course. I did a golf outing for a nonprofit I'm involved with, and my old boss called me just to check in on me, see how things are going. And he said, he's just glad that it's going so well.
Yep.
And it's just trusting the process, though.
That's amazing. Well, what are your final thoughts for today? We covered a lot, and I really appreciate this. How's your future looking? We know it's bright with Schooley Mitchell. You got 3 young kids. Yes. Your wife is obviously happy with what's going on. You're home more often.
Yeah, that I am. So final thoughts. Ultimately, it was very funny. The ink wasn't even dry on my agreement. My contract that I signed with Schooley Mitchell, and my CPA, who also works with franchises, he set me up with some exit strategy folks. And I'm like, I haven't even started working day one, and it was such a great opportunity because when I sat down with them, they said, "Listen, one day, one way or another, you are going to sell this franchise. Somehow, some way, it's going to happen. And what you need to realize is you don't want to sell a job. You want to sell a business."
Absolutely.
And so your goal should be to work yourself out of that job to where you're running a business and you're not working in it, because it's going to make your business so much more profitable. So that's ultimately the goal, is to work myself to the point where I'm out of that job and just running the business.
Yeah, you bring up a pretty amazing point that I haven't covered in any detail yet, and we could touch on it right now because you brought up an amazing point. There are quite a few exit strategists, financial advisors, and what have you. A very good friend of mine and fraternity brother I had a conversation with about this the other day. He just helped a franchisee exit because you have to figure out tax ramifications. What do I do with my money? I mean, these are all great things to have. And, Schooley Mitchell, even though it's a $68,000 investment or so, there are multiple people that have exited for $1.5 million, $1.6 million, $1.7 million. And then most recently, a Canadian franchisee for Schooley Mitchell is well over $3 million plus, $3.5 million by the time you convert it to US dollars, I should say. Pretty amazing. And to a lot of listeners, what? I can invest 68,000. Well, depends. Are you Adam? Nobody's Adam, but there are amazing opportunities. So I'm glad you brought that up. So what is your long-term plan? How many years? I mean, you're young. How many years you plan on working? Next 40?
Next 40.
The next 40?
I plan on working the next 40, but probably not with Schooley Mitchell. So the way I've got the plan set up is year 9 is when I would no longer be working it. My ultimate goal is to purchase a couple more locations right around Lake Erie. That way I can kind of have this whole area. Because there are some stipulations for where you can hire your sales force, things like that. But ultimately end up with 2 more locations and have a nice little sales force that runs this whole little region right here. Ultimately hire someone to lead them and me just let it go.
Love it. Well, that sounds like an amazing plan. Adam, thank you so much for being here. You were awesome.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Thank you very much for listening today. Please like, follow, and subscribe. This is Lance Graulich. Until next time.